slam. He's the greatest. He's the greatest.
G'day guys, we are live here and we are at the BELMO show again. Today's show is going to be epic. We have an amazing guest on our show today. We will be introducing the commissioner of the PBA, Tom Clark, and we've got a lot to talk about with Tom. I want to kind of get into what it's like over there for the PBA right now. I want to talk about some of his childhood memories with the PBA, maybe a little Syracuse stuff, and we'll see where the conversation goes from there. On the classroom, I'll be giving you guys a tip on how we can best change our axis rotation, which will allow us to create more or less hook, which is really, really important because when we want to be versatile, we need to have versatile releases. And I'll also be doing a giveaway. So I can't wait for that to happen as well. So let's not keep him waiting any longer and we'll head over to the settee right now. G'day, Mr. Tom Clark. How are you, mate?
How are you, mate? Great to see you. I hope you and your family are doing well. It's great to see him.
Yeah.
Boy, you're the last people I ever talked to in person.
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny actually. When we were setting up the time for this meeting, you sent me a picture, and the picture was of you and I, kind of like a hey, congratulations hug. And you said to me, "Hey, you were the last person outside of my immediate family that I hugged." So I don't know. I'm sorry. That's the case, but. It was a good hug. It was one of those very sentimental, momentous occasion had just happened, and it was nice that hopefully I gave you a good one, so you enjoyed your last public hug for a while.
That definitely was, and I think we all just kind of threw caution to the wind at that moment. It was a special moment for you and for the PBA, and I actually remember my last handshake too. And this was March 15th, for everybody. This was really one of the last sporting events that was live on TV before this whole shutdown. And, we had no fans and it was really surreal in there. But, Bill Chrisman, one of your biggest supporters for your entire career, the founder, the owner of Storm, was the last person I actually shook his hand. And we both looked at each other when I did it and said, whoa, wait, we're not supposed to be doing this right now. We'd all learned to either elbow bump or just wave by that point. But we almost just by habit shook hands. And that's the last person's hand I shook. And now it's May 5th or whatever it is. I mean, really just a surreal time in the history of the planet to think a week before that when we were bowling the World Series of Bowling that our kids wouldn't go to school again. And March Madness would be canceled, and Major League Baseball and the NBA playoffs and just everything. The Kentucky Derby.
It's unprecedented. Yeah, it's unprecedented. And, I know a lot of fans are, kind of in that, well, when is everything going to get back to normality? And the thing is no one really knows the answer to that. But I know there's a question that you've been asked a lot. I know Cole has been asked a lot, and I know you don't have any answers, but I'm going to ask it anyway and see if there's any further updates. Tom, when is the PBA coming back? I know you've released some news about the playoffs, which is the PBA League, which is really great. So maybe just in case someone's been living under a rock and hasn't been following the PBA for the last couple of days, maybe just let everybody know what that news update is.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, the PBA League, which is scheduled for July at Bayside Bowl, and fingers crossed. But again, it's one of those things we just can't really confirm yet. But it's on the schedule, and it's what we're hoping for. But the big news is that we're going to hold our PBA League draft virtually with all the managers being remote on May 17th, and that's going to be live on Flow Bowling. And that's going to be really cool. So for the rest of this month, bowling fans can talk about who would they draft and what does each team need and which players are going to make it into the league and which might not. And it's kind of a really good diversion for all the bowling fans to be able to just talk about bowling and talk about something that's a lot of fun, which is the PBA League, and but also serious competition and serious for the players to see who will get picked. So it's a big moment of the year, and being able to do it will provide a lot of content for the next month for PBA fans to pay attention to on Flow, on our Facebook page and website and things like that. So that'll be cool. But, we still believe that the PBA Tour Finals will be July 18, 19. That's a CBS Sports Network event. We have that on the schedule. And then, we really had more than 80% of the 2020 PBA National Tour schedule completed. The only things left were the 3 World Series of Bowling Animal Pattern events, the USBC Masters, and the PBA playoffs, which are all big. I mean, they're big events in our year. But because we finished so early in the year, the hope is we'll be able to bring all of those events to the fall and winter, assuming everything gets back to normal, and you can't guarantee it yet. But assuming we get close enough to normal, our goal is to complete those events in the fall and back on Fox and FS1. And Fox has been a great partner through all of this. They're going to be really, they're really helping us figure that part of it out. So we really feel like we're going to get the bulk of the season done. It's just going to look a little bit different than was originally planned. I think the parts of the season that are really worrisome that we're working on every single day is like the summer tour, the PBA 50 tour, the regional tour, and the types of events that rely on entries and full fields to create the kind of prize funds that make these events worthwhile. And we, without knowing, the rules and each state having different rules and different phases of reopening the country, it's really difficult to plan for that. We've got plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but and just know, everyone should know that everyone that's involved is committed to just getting back on the lanes. Anyway, we're going to find the angle, we'll find the location, and we're going to get as much professional bowling in front of people as we can.
Yeah, and we appreciate that as the players. I mean, I think a lot of people, forget that the PBA Tour isn't just the national tour. There are a lot of different elements behind the tour itself. So understanding that, yes, it's great if we can get us back on television and run the national tour, but there's a lot that goes into an entire PBA tour. So I'm really thankful for you guys doing what you can on your end to kind of get us back get us back to wherever we can as soon as possible. And obviously, it's nice to know that it's not just the top tier that we're planning for. It's all of those other PBA Tour events that people want to watch, people want to compete in, people want to follow, fans want to follow. So that's really, really awesome. I want to just switch gears a little bit now, Tom. And a lot of people know you're the commissioner of the PBA. I think a lot of fans understand that you have a passion for the game, but I'm not entirely sure they understand how far back and how deep that passion runs. And I know that you are an avid bowling fan, an avid PBA fan. And as a child, you watched a lot of the telecasts, and that's kind of where your passion and love for the game started. So I want you to roll back the years in your mind. And is there a specific moment or a player that you watched and you were like, this is why I love this game?
Yes, I remember it. I remember it all, and absolutely it was my favorite sport, and I love all sports. And from the time I could stand up, my parents were putting a plastic ball in my hand, and I was rolling a plastic ball at plastic pins, just like a lot of the pro bowlers have the same story of how they kind of grew up with the game. But I would also, when the PBA Tour came on ABC, and I would have my plastic ball, and I'd be in the hallway, and I'd be bowling at those pins and bowling against Earl Anthony and all the guys that we'd watch week to week on the PBA tour. And I just remember the exact spots where I'd sit and watch the show with my dad. My father's a great bowler and has been his whole life. And he certainly introduced me to the game, and he's never missed a PBA show. And I'll tell you this, he's never missed an Extra Frame show or a Flow Bowling show or any show. He's the #1 fan of professional bowling. And he would be even if I wasn't involved. I mean, he just loves the game. But I remember one day I was at my grandparents' house in Syracuse, and we were sitting there, and Mark Roth was bowling on TV, and just watching. And I may have been 7 years old, 1977, 1978, 8 years old. And I just can remember the way that my father and my grandmother, who was a bowling fan, and my grandfather, the way that they talked about him and the way that they made decisions whether they liked him or not, and how they were really just glued to the set because he was an electric performer at the time. It made me idolize, Mark Roth, and then idolize Marshall Holman, and be in awe of Earl Anthony. And, that they were really the triumvirate during that time period when I was growing up, and they all had their own personality and kind of excitement and lore and legend. And so, I'll never forget all that. And then just growing up, I mean, whether the PBA was on ESPN at night during the summer tours, or whether it was on Saturday afternoons, and then the late 90s, it was a rough patch for the PBA, and that's when I was getting older too, and changing in the game, and then I was almost losing some interest, and it was really almost depressing to me. But then the new PBA came along in 2000, and that really rejuvenated all of my interest. But I don't think I've ever missed a show if I could help it. I mean, I remember most of them. Those Quaker State Opens with Marshall Holman and Mark Roth going at it. If you go back on YouTube and watch that stuff, it's just amazing. And it really felt big. And I've always, really just struggled with the idea that anyone wouldn't understand how exciting bowling is to watch, and what a great professional sport, and how great the best players are at it. And I understand that, most people kind of need to play the game to understand that. But I don't know, it's been the thing that's always puzzled me, even in high school, being the best bowler in my high school, it wasn't going to do the same thing for me socially as being the best football player in my high school, or the best basketball player. And I've always been kind of moved by the idea that I want that kid in high school that's a great bowler to have the kind of cachet that the great basketball player has, by making professional bowlers stars, by getting the exposure out there more and bringing more prestige to it, so that people and kids will choose to play this game, because I'm really convinced it's the greatest game ever invented.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I agree with you on that statement. And, I kind of wished that Australia had a lot of that, the history with the PBA. I mean, we just didn't have it on our television screens. I was never able to watch. I didn't even know the PBA existed until we had some friends. Well, they ended up being our friends, but they were Americans that moved to Orange because of work. He was in the mining game. So we have a mine just outside of town. And he stayed for a couple of years. And when he left to go back to the US, he would send us these tapes sporadically. And the very first one I ever watched was watching Norm Duke curve the whole lane with a Columbia Beast. And it was like a week later, I ended up begging my father for the Columbia Beast. But that was the very first time I ever saw that the PBA existed. And I didn't have the luxury of being able to turn on TV every Saturday and watch it. So I would just watch these 1 or 2 tapes religiously all day, as much as I possibly can, quoting the commentators before they even say what they're about to say, and then just praying that we'd go to the mailbox and there'd be a new tape for us to watch. But then obviously now, with the access to, television, the internet, with YouTube, kids from all over the world can have access and are aware of the PBA. And it's one of the things that I'm kind of really grateful that we are in this era now that, you know what, things are different, sure. And well, things right now are really different. But once we get past the COVID, we have potential to grow beyond our wildest dreams. So I really am excited about, what's to come. And it's a lot of the things that have driven us from the past, the passions, what we fell in love with it, trying to recreate that using different mediums for different people around the world. And I think we're doing a really good job. I mean, we have a huge following on YouTube with the PBA channel. We have the largest subscriber count ever for our digital platform with Flow Bowling. I mean, there are a lot of avenues. Social media, the list can go on, go on, go on. But, I think it's really important for everyone to understand that the people who are involved with the PBA, they live it, they breathe it. There's no hidden agendas here. This is how do we make the sport be as great as it possibly can be. And I will never forget, Tom, you've had this passion for bowling for as long as that I can remember meeting you. I remember we met, I don't even want to guess the year, but I was still an amateur and you were working for the USBC, if I recall. And you and I had a conversation about my future in the game. And I think you gave me some really nice compliments about, my potential. And you kind of gave me that father-son chat about, I just need you to work as hard as you can because your potential is there. But what do you remember about the first time you and I met?
Well, what's kind of sad about that is, I think I was about your age now at that time when I first met you. And am I connected?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I think I was probably about the age you are today when we first met. But it's kind of like, sorry, I got my connection went bad. I distinctly remember that meeting. I mean, I watched you bowl in the Masters as an amateur, and someone had told me, Tommy DeLutz had told me I had to go check this guy out. I got to check this guy Belmo out, and I checked you out, and I was like, wow. And I watched for a while, and kind of I have a pretty good eye for something that's special, but I remember bringing you into my office and talking about, being an ambassador for the game, and actually up on the wall was a poster of the 20 greatest players of the last 75 years or something like that. It's a pretty classic poster in bowling, and all the players on that poster were, for the most part, veterans of the PBA. And I remember having a conversation with you about, how if you're going to be a legend in this game, I think you've got to do it in the PBA and you're on the PBA tour. And this was before I worked for the PBA, so it wasn't just a, kind of a selfish statement or anything like that. And you had been so successful globally and the PBA was at a point where it really wasn't a priority or really a need of yours to think I have to go all in on the PBA to be all I can be. You could be, the greatest globetrotter and create a niche for yourself. And but I talked to you about the PBA, and I remember that I wrote a column about you. When this must have been, just after watching you bowl, and you hadn't won any PBA tournaments, and it was either in Bowler's Journal or US Bowler. I can't remember which one. But it was pretty glowing, and it was pretty much, you need to pay attention to this young man because he could be the future of the game. And all of those types of things, you before this call, you were nice enough to ask me what would I like to talk about bowling. And I just realized I want to talk about BELMO, because BELMO, is the best story in bowling, and we're both very familiar with it. So I think we'd be good about talking about BELMO. And
I think most of my close friends say I'm too good at talking about.
No, well, I'm making you do it. And you know, because our careers with the PBA, you know, I started with the PBA in 2008, and that's when you started in the PBA. And so our entire careers have been at the exact same time through this era. And all
Well,
along,
I started, my plan, my personal plan of goals back then was, I don't know if I was quite ready to go to the PBA tour. Like you said, I was still traveling around Asia and Europe, and I was making quite a lot of money, and I was quite successful. And when we did meet, I guess there was some plans in the background about, all right, look, if he wants to come on tour, you know, how does he get here? How does he do that? And you asked me, you know, would you be interested in accepting a commissioner's exemption if I was to organize that for you? And I said, well, it's, you know, it's a lot of money. It's a long way to go. And, you know, for one tournament in a tournament experience that I've never I've had played a couple of majors, like you said, but never on the week to week grind or whatever it was. I'm like, I don't know if I'd be ready for it. And you said, look, let's see if we can't get you back to back weeks. We'll try and organize 2 commissioner exemptions. So on the 1 plane ticket, you know, you get 2 events, and we'll see how you go. And I'll never forget the backlash that I think you received more than anyone, or the PBA received. And I did horribly in both of those events. I think I came like 10th last, and I don't know, maybe 50th in another event. And it was like, well, that was a waste of 2 commissioner exemptions.
no, well, you know, but that's a good, all along the way, from before 2008 to today, really. I've been accused of giving you favors or wanting you to win or making it easy for you. And you've had to live with that, and I've had to live with that. That kind of chatter. And we're both way over that. It's not like it bothers us or anything like that. But I do want to tell the story about how that's really the furthest thing from the truth. And that from my perspective, through all of that, I was challenging you. I wasn't giving you anything. I was putting you in these pressure situations based on the idea that, yes, I thought I saw something special, and you were worth challenging, worth putting on stage. If someone writes a glowing column about you and puts a spotlight on you in the US about this guy from Australia who bowls 2 hands, that's not giving you something. That is putting pressure on you. And if giving you a special exemption to bowl in the Six Flags event that we did, I think it was 2008 or 7.
Yeah.
Where you weren't not even in the PBA. And I put you in this event with the 20 best players in the PBA at Six Flags bowling outside. That wasn't giving you something. That was saying, okay, here you go. Here's a spotlight. Here are the best players in the world. You're in there.
I think we live in a society, Tom, where if there are 10 people that want the same thing and there's only one of that to go around, it can be difficult for the other 9 not to wonder, well, why didn't I get that prize and this one person did? And if it happens to be the same person getting quite a lot of these things, it can certainly, you know, appear to show favoritism. And it's something that, like you said, yeah, I've had to deal with that. But at the same time, my reply was always, well, if you're prepared and if you're willing to claim what you seem to be as a benefit, then you've got to take everything that comes along with it. That means if you don't do well, be prepared to have the world call you out on that performance. I mean, a lot of the pros, even the top pros, if they have a bad week, it goes virtually unnoticed. No one knows that Tommy Jones missed the cut or whatever. I use Tommy as an example. I didn't mean to. Tommy, very rare you miss the cut anyway. But and I like you said, I mean the
we go to
as a challenge.
We go to the first World Series of bowling, and I put you on stage as the face of that event. And this was really, I think you had won once before that first World Series in Detroit. But there's a lot of great PBA Hall of Famers, and here you are on the dais, and you are held up in a way that when you miss the first cut, you're exactly right. Everybody notices that. Everybody's pointing at you. And when you go to those 2 exemptions, and I knew that the PBA is incredibly difficult and that nobody should be able to walk right in and do well on the PBA Tour. And I had complete confidence in the players on the PBA Tour, and yet felt like you were the guy that could handle that amount of pressure without even telling you that. I never told you that. Just said, here's your opportunity. You're going to take it. And you did really,
well,
and you fought, you didn't, it wasn't all wins. The Six Flags event, you go back and watch it. You didn't bowl that good. The commissioner exemption, you didn't make it. But
didn't bowl that good, no.
No, but
no,
each
well, that's
time.
That's the thing, right? That's the thing, though. We're talking about like how to handle that kinds of stuff. I think I don't know if you are currently watching, but I'm watching The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary, and I think a lot of people are. And you look at that kind of mentality. Michael lost, in the finals against Detroit, and there was this understanding from his perspective of no one's going to be perfect, right? But the ones who are the greatest in anything seem to, when it's all said and done, they find a way. And I always admired athletes in that same regard. And I did my research, right? Because I did feel that pressure. I did, it was really difficult to handle when you're this kind of young kid and you're just traveling overseas and your home is 15,000 kilometers away, and you're kind of getting, the nasty stuff in the locker room, or the hey, you're only here because the PBA wants to make you their golden child, all of those types of things. And you start to wonder, am I actually any good to be here? But you fall back on looking at the greatest. And I mean, I'm trying to remember an athlete who from the earliest age or from the very first time in their professional careers just said, yep, I'm dominating. I'm going to be the greatest that's ever happened. They all seem to become that over a process of time. And I even watched recently a documentary about Usain Bolt. And, we're talking about the fastest man in the world. And, he had to overcome injury before he could reclaim that title. And there was a moment when the idol of Usain Bolt maybe wouldn't exist if he just went, I can't handle it. I can't handle people trashing my speed while I'm injured, and I don't want to deal with this, and just gave up. But he didn't. He worked through the injury and became who he is today, the fastest man to have ever run. And maybe will be the king on the track for a long way to come. So whilst you didn't tell me that, I think that's a part of my personality. I'm just saying, yeah, all right. I've been told since I was a kid I'm never going to make it, or the way that I bowl is a little bit, it's a little bit different, and maybe I should conform. I wasn't expecting it from the PBA Tour, to be honest, because, well, I was just in awe of the tour. I was like, it was one of those moments where like, oh, I'm here. This is the greatest thing ever. And then you realize, oh, it's not as friendly as you as you thought.
But you were clearly great. You could see it. And so from a selfish standpoint, from the PBA standpoint, I didn't want there to be this guy who was better than or great doing it outside of the PBA Tour. The PBA Tour, to me, is, always was, always will be where the greatest players in the world are. And so if the greatest players in the world aren't here, it's not the PBA that I grew up watching with my grandmother and grandfather, that we knew they were the best. I wanted the best on the PBA Tour, and I saw you, talk to you enough to know that you were a special person, gave you every one of those things, not giving you, challenging you to basically say, okay, we're going to make sure you're either not going to be one of these guys, or you're going to end up being so good and having gone through so much from a spotlight standpoint. That's the hardest part that people don't understand. Like you articulated a few minutes ago, but when everyone's looking at you, like everyone was looking at Jordan from his first year because he was so exciting and he would lose. You'd lose. You'd lose the play. It was 7 years or so before he broke through and beat Detroit. And then once he did, and he won the NBA championship, and he had like 13 straight baskets, including the spectacular move, against the Lakers. That was such a height of amazing accomplishment that he became so iconic that he'll never be forgotten. And I think that that's what's happened with you, is there's so much attention, so much pressure. He won one. Wow, that was amazing. A two-hand bowler won. He's from Australia, first one ever. But he's still, but still, he was given this, he was given that. Now you've won 13 majors. They talk about patterns and making patterns for you. We change the patterns every year. We challenge the players differently every single year. I try to challenge you in different ways when I don't even know if you know that in my mind, that's the way I'm thinking of it. Where, when you made the finals, we went back to Riviera Lanes for the first time ever. That was my favorite tournament to watch as a kid, the Tournament of Champions at Riviera Lanes. I grew up thinking about lanes 27 and 8. That's the pair. That's where they bowled. And I remember you made the show the first time we went back there. And we were standing on that pair during practice, and I said that to you. And I don't think you weren't aware of that. You weren't aware that, well, this is exactly where Don Johnson went to the ground on his 299. This is exactly where Marshall Holman held that trophy up in the air on this exact same pair. This is where the history of the game is, in this building, on this pair, and you're here. And I wanted you to think about things like that, because to me, somebody that
gives you goosebumps just thinking about it again, Tom, to be honest. They have the sign at the front of the door, through these doors, the greatest bowlers have walked. I'm not even sure if that's the exact quote, but you're 100% right. And I guess my responsibility now is to create that type of environment. So the kids will say, this was the pair that BELMO was on, or this was the pair that Bill O'Neill, Anthony Simonson, or EJ Tackett was on. And I think that's probably our first and foremost responsibility of the PBA. And maybe it's not everything that investors want to hear. It's not about making money, but for me, it's about creating a legacy that we don't just draw upon, the Don Carter eras, that we create our own time frame that people will look back at and remember as a wonderful time to be a part of the PBA or to watch it. And yeah, you know what? The basketballers, they had their Larry Birds and Magic Johnsons, then they had their Jordans. Now we've got our LeBrons and Steph Curry. Like there's a generation that keeps coming through. But
creating electricity that will be the standard and will last forever, and will have kids want to be like you, like I wanted to be like Mark Roth. That kind of electricity is not easy to create. And there's eras where it lacks, and there's eras in all sports. And there's been so many moments where you've been in the heart of those moments that I've felt that type of electricity that you cannot fake. It's like making a split, in the championship match. Or, I remember a moment, you might not even remember it. I remember a moment at Bayside Bowl when we were bowling one of the singles tournaments. I think it was only on extra frame. And, it's just dark in there. And you were bowling a match, I think, against Josh Blanchard, maybe, for the title. I think he beat you, actually.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me of that one. That was a terrible end to that tournament. I bowled so well until I got to him.
But during that match, I had the feeling that there really wasn't, it was not extra frame, but there wasn't that many people watching. But here's this guy from Australia who's done all of these amazing things. And there's all these people that are just really, an exciting group of people watching bowling that we all want, younger people, cool people. And you made some kind of split, like it was some amazing split in a very clutch situation. And you could just feel the electricity in the room. Like you said, the goosebumps come up. And it's not because you're rooting for someone. It's because you just saw something spectacular. And that stuff doesn't leave. That gets in your blood. That makes you want to play that sport. That's what the PBA is all about. And a lot of guys on the PBA tour have created moments like this, believe me. But but you are, the guy now, and the way that you handled all of these challenges, and the
So
way that,
I'm going to put you on the spot here, Tom. I'm going
Mhm.
to put you on the spot here. Okay. Right now, Flow Bowling is doing a bit of a salute to two-handed bowling. It has, over my career, been one of the most controversial things that I'm associated with. But I guess I've never actually heard you comment on it. Now, you grew up back in the day, right? Traditional bowlers. And I appreciate all the kind words that you've said about me so far and what my potential was going to be and where I am now. But I don't think I've ever actually heard you comment on where is your stance on two-handed bowling? Like, do you even look at it like that? Do you even care? Or are you a traditionalist at heart that's just accepting an evolution to the game?
I cared at first. When I think of you, though, I don't think of you as a two-hand bowler. I really don't. I just think of you as a bowler, as a great performer at the highest level of our sport that I love. I don't sit there and go, well, here's a two-hander and here's this. I don't think that way about you at all. At first I did. At first, that's the reason why I went to watch you, because there was this, crazy new style, and it was kind of spreading across YouTube. And there were some people that bowled um, two-handed on YouTube back in the day that it almost was ridiculous. Remember the guy who had spun it in front of his head and dropped on the lane and was getting strikes? And people like me that were traditionalists definitely struggled with that and kind of felt like, wait a minute, these bowling balls, the way the lanes are being done, all these things are somehow making allowing this style to ruin the game. And it just seemed like all the two-handers were doing, taking advantage of the ball by being able to throw it faster and know that it was going to hook, and that was taking some of the touch feel out of the game, and all the stuff that you heard. But then once I'm not like I'm not closed-minded. I'm not going to sit here and be like that forever. I watched and learned and realized and saw what you did throughout a block, every single tournament, and all the guys, and realized, no, this is just kind of a smart way to approach the game.
So,
And
Tom, back when you mentioned Mark Roth, right, being one of your idols, and Mark was obviously and has contributed to a change of the game because he was doing something that no one else was doing. Was there a separation of category back then? Were there players going, he's the best, stroker, or he's the best power player? Did that happen back
yes, yeah,
then?
but he was kind of alone, though, and that's why he was on the show every week. I mean, for a few years he was alone, and obviously, if you go back and watch watch the YouTube videos from that era, and you hear about all the stories about how Mark Roth hooked it so much, his ball hooked like a board. It wasn't really hooking that much actually at the
Right.
start when using plastic. It was just he was able to throw it faster without it and still drive through the pins. And the whole object of the game back then really was to drive out the 5 pin. And so if people could figure
Right.
out ways to drive the 5 out, like Marshall Holman did and Mark Roth did, they were able to win. Now the 5 pin is really not part of the equation because the ball does take care of that. But back then there definitely was a hatred of the cranker, and that this guy was ruining the game. And even guys who I love now, like Bo Burton, if you go back and listen to those shows and he was the announcer, at first I don't know that there was really as much respect, for Mark Roth as he now gets, because people were thinking that he was somehow bastardizing the thing. And
Yeah.
and then everybody realized that they have to come up that way. I thought Tommy Jones was actually the next evolution of the game, in that the way he threw the ball was really radical compared to Mark Roth kind of hitting up on it, or the idea of putting turn on the ball. He would, Tommy Jones was able to get that kind of spin on it by starting it earlier, and hadn't seen much of that. And then everybody started doing that and kind of caught up to it. And then came the two-handed, and they were big crankers
Yeah,
in between.
that's the goal that I have. Oh, hello, Sylvie. Sylvie's joining us for a little chat. Sorry, Tom.
All right, good to see you again.
Say hi, you're
Yeah.
live, Sylvie, across the entire world. You can't hear anyone because
Okay.
my headphones are in, but Tom is saying hi, and he says that you better listen to Daddy and do everything that Daddy says. That's exactly what Tom just said. No, I remember watching, guys like Tommy, and I was in awe of how they threw the ball as well. And I guess now that we look back at it, I don't look at Tommy or Norm Duke or EJ Tackett and Walter Ray. I don't really categorize them differently, right? I see them as players, but I guess even to the mainstream, they are categorized under traditional now. Tommy and EJ are technically categorized as traditional players. And I'm hoping, and what I really do push for, is to eventually have the way that I bowl just be added into not a traditional, not unconventional. It's just bowling, and you're either really good at it or you're not. It's not you're really good. You're the best of this category. You're the best two-handed. That was actually, I'll tell you something funny. When I was going through Europe and when I first come to the PBA, there was a lot of rivalry from the fans and from other competitors with Osku and myself. And everybody was saying, the topic was, who's the better two-handed player? Is it Oscar? Is it Jason? And there would just be these arguments and debates about it. And they would ask me, it appears you are now the best two-handed player and your career seems to be headed that way. How does that make you feel? And it was like, I don't care if I'm the best two-hander in the world, if that makes me the 100th best bowler in the world. So I want to get rid of that stigma of being known as the best of something if that something isn't just the world in general. That's it. That's what I wanted to do. So I guess you're seeing a lot of the transitions through bowling, through technology, through style, through technique, and to hear that, sometimes we have to kind of roll with it, excuse the pun, but sometimes we just kind of have to allow things to happen and just embrace it, and I think that's what the PBA has done with two-handed bowling. We could have been that group that says, no, we are a traditional, one-handed bowling.
Yeah. No, I was hit with that. I was hit with that, and I was hit with that constantly, and but at first, admittedly, the fact that it was different, what you were doing, was one reason why there would be attention for you, and there would be the idea that this could be a media story, and it actually was. I mean, you were on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, your first year. The ESPN did a E60 20-minute piece on you and two-hand bowling, and so you became the face of that. And I mean, you call yourself #2hands. I mean, you're a proponent of it, which is great. So you're never going to be away from that. But when I go to a tournament, I don't think of you as a two-hander. I don't think of you in the history. I don't say, well, there was this guy, and then there was this two-hander. I just think of it as a pure evolution of the game. And to the point, and EJ Tackett, you bring him up. He's a level of evolution of the game that I could never even imagine. I mean, if you took EJ Tackett and brought him back to 1975 and said, bowl just like that, everyone would stop and look at this kid and say, how is this even possible? Who would have thought to do that? But you only think about it because of the evolution of the game. No one would have thought to take the ball to the basket like Michael Jordan. Nobody would have thought.
I'll tell you, Tom, if I ever want to see what a bowling ball looks like like when I think to myself, I wonder what this ball would look like going down a lane, but with higher rev rate, I usually ask EJ. I go, hey, EJ, do you want to throw this ball for me? It's going to spin faster in your hand. So
when we did the plastic ball tournaments, I really thought that it showed that it wasn't the ball, that the two-hand player. I mean, you dominated one or two of those, or one of them, so it clearly showed that it wasn't the ball that was the reason a two-hand bowler could dominate a tournament.
Could we ever have that tournament back, Tom? Because actually, I remember that in the show when I led that year, which I'm a huge advocate that when the argument comes up, what's the biggest cause to increase or inflated scoring? And when I ever hear people go, oh, it's the bowling balls, I always bring up that plastic ball tournament, and I say I averaged the highest I ever have in any PBA event at that tournament. Why? Why would that be? And it's because, well, the bowling ball isn't, I mean, I think, I'm not saying there's 0% in factor in a bowling ball in higher inflated scores, but I think what we bowl on has a larger percentage. And that tournament was also proof that it wasn't necessarily whoever had the highest rev rate. We had Walter Ray Williams on that show, I believe. A part of me feels like Dick Allen might have been on that show. The winner, Brian
Machuga was on.
Machuga.
Yeah.
Brian Zyzek was the eventual winner. And if you put him and I next to each other, we're about as opposite. You know, he curves it, but he has a very low rev rate. So, you know, to me, it was a really cool tournament because, like you said, you kind of had to get your ball to kick that 5-pin out, but everyone could do it their own certain way. You didn't have to conform to one specific way of doing it, which, I don't know, was really cool. Do you think we'll ever see throwback tournaments like that again?
I think we definitely should do them. You know, I think the main reason why you could score so high at being a great player is you didn't have to move as much. You know, the balls don't impact the pattern as much as a high reactive bowling ball does, that makes you continually move and changes the shot so quickly. I mean, that's the really biggest challenge of bowling on a sport or flat condition with reactive bowling balls compared to being able to just line up and stay there and make one board move like the old days. I mean, Chris Barnes, the first year of the plastic ball tournament, I think Chris Barnes shot at least 2 800s during it. And so, yeah, but I think the main reason why we had to stop doing the plastic ball was really more business related, and, you know, investments from bowling ball companies into the PBA and how important they are to the success of the organization, and taking up one of the shows or one of the big events of the year with an event that dialed down bowling ball equipment wasn't really attractive to them. And sometimes you have to make decisions based on those partnerships and the overall good of the game. But I think that there's definitely room for certainly one ball tournaments, old school retro type tournaments. I'd love to see you guys do it on wood lanes, you know, and really recreate the whole atmosphere from different eras. There's no one era that was the right way. I mean, there's been very many different eras. Way before plastic balls, there were wooden balls. I mean, where do you stop? You know, but I'd love to see and same thing in other sports. I'd love to see a golf tournament where they're all using wood drivers, and I'd love to see a tennis tournament with wood rackets. And you know, but all these sports kind of self-correct. I mean, for a while, I think that reactive bowling balls did hurt bowling because people were just taking advantage of the power of them. So you had just straight players being able to just throw as hard as they could at the pocket and carry that 5 out. Whereas before, they couldn't just do that without deflection. And so you had an era where the skill of being able to manipulate a ball and hook it and be consistent and accurate with your spin and speed as much as your just accuracy on the lane was getting lost. But then the game, because I think in that Tommy Jones era, it recreated itself, and now power, once again, in the hand, the way that you guys release it, has become the most important piece, or power and accuracy combined is a piece, not just accuracy. And tennis, you know, I love tennis with John McEnroe and Bjorn Borg with wood rackets and the touch and the feel, and it was beautiful. And then for an era or so with you know, modern rackets, just serving the ball well became the whole game, and serve volley over, and it became boring. But now, because people realized or figured out a way to stay back, like Agassi kind of brought that in, and now what you see from Federer and Nadal are just incredible tennis with the modern equipment. They don't have to have the old equipment to be able to play in an exciting way because the game corrected itself. Golf has had to increase the length of every golf course in the country. I mean, they've had to change everything to be able to self-correct itself from being run over by technology. And bowlers and bowling has figured it out too. And we've done the PBA has done a really good job. We've had pretty good lane men and good strategies for how to put together tournaments to bring the best out of players and change them up and use tournaments that have multiple patterns and different lengths of events and formats. And you know, you've overcome them all. And almost always, the best players all end up going to the top, no matter what you do, because they have something special in them that isn't based on technology. It's not based on, one thing. It's based on, a lot of it's based on heart. A lot of it's based on the brain, and a lot of it's based on dedication. Focus is something that is so underrated in bowling, and you know how to find focus. You know how to find it. Sometimes I find it, and when I'm in there, and I don't mean bowling, I mean in work. And when I've got it, good things are going to happen. And everybody needs to figure out a way to find focus. And when I've seen guys, I remember going up to DJ Archer one week and saying, "Man, I have never seen you so zeroed in." And this is a guy that you don't see up there every single week. He's got his own special way that he bowls. No one bowls like DJ Archer. And I saw the look in his eye and his focus, and really early in the tournament, and he went right on. He went all the way to the final. And I think it was at the Players Championship. He made the show. And it was because of his level of focus at that moment. It had nothing to do with technology, lane patterns, any of this stuff. Bowling's a great sport. It really demands every single part of a human being to raise to the top of it. And I love watching it.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I love doing it, is because every single day, we do get criticized a lot by the fans about, they just do the same thing over and over. It's the lane starts to hook, they just start getting left, and that's all they do. And the truth of the matter is like you said, I mean, we have access to technology now that I don't think very many sports can manipulate the environment on a day-to-day basis. We can use different oil. We can change the length. We can change the pattern. We can change the environment on a day-to-day, which is like the World Series is right now. Every other day we use a different oil with a different oil pattern, and your bowling ball now has to do something different. If a golf championship is playing at Augusta, well, they can only curate the course one way. That's it. That's what it's going to be from beginning to end. And I think we have the luxury, but also allow us to be really creative in how we can challenge our athletes into becoming, the best players in the world. Tom, I could literally talk to you.
Yeah, we keep going. You just tipped me off to a bunch of things I'd love to talk about, but I know you have a limit to your show.
But okay, I want to leave you with an in the clutch. Okay, and
okay.
Present. It's a question I'm going to ask you, and I want to make sure you don't feel obliged to say my name because so present company excluded. But you're in trouble, Tom. Okay, you're in serious trouble. A couple of bad guys have got you tied up, and they're about to do something really, really bad to you. And they say, "We'll stop doing these bad things to you right now if you can get somebody to roll a strike for you." And it has to be one shot right now. You've got one phone call. Who are you calling?
It's really an easy one for me. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to say it, but it's easy for me, and it's probably not that original, but it would be Norm. It would be Norm Duke. When I see him come up, sometimes I wonder why he doesn't strike every single ball. He seems like a wizard almost. I mean, he's a special guy. We've had a lot of, I always read all this stuff about the greatest of all time and who's the best. And I really think it's true that there's a bunch of people that you could put that label on. I mean, there's been times watching Pete Weber and seeing what how natural he is at the game where you think, he's the best. He's the game. He's bowling. I mean, and he's perfect. And then you see a guy like Walter Ray who will fight and he will hit the pocket guaranteed if you need that one strike. And so he's a guy that you think of. And and Chris Barnes, I mean, he's a guy that I would have in that conversation as well. And there's
he's a guy, Tom, that it frustrates me beyond all end. Fans that criticize Chris as not being clutch because he's missed a few times on television. But I have seen it all too many times through every stage of a tournament where Chris needs something to move on, and he gets to those shows because he's had those moments 4 or 5 times previously, or maybe even more if you start counting, striking to win matches in round robins and things like that. And whenever I read some idiot behind a computer screen go, Chris Barnes isn't clutch. It makes me want to punch the
he's also
in front of.
He's also really good, but he's also really tough, and he wants he wants those situations. I mean, no matter how many times he may have had he may have not come through, and he puts almost too much pressure on himself sometimes. But he is a tough guy. I mean, here's what I remember. Just to remember your career. I think the first tournament that I was actually commissioner of the PBA and running the event, and you were really your first one as, okay, I'm in the PBA, was the PBA World Championship in Wichita. And you went out to about a 300 pin lead in qualifying. You were unbelievable after I was telling everybody about you, and you went out to that lead. And then I remember I put more pressure on you and challenged you again by putting PBA.com and put flames behind you. And you were, looking at this guy. And he's taking the PBA on by storm. And then you got a bye, I think, in your first round of match play. And I think
it was the super bye. It was the top 8 got a super bye.
Yep.
And my match ended up having to play Chris. Yeah.
Chris Barnes. And I just said to myself, you know what? I wish if there was betting on bowling and I was allowed to bet, I'd bet on Barnes. And and everybody was like, he's going to get run over. I said, this kid wants to bowl Belmonte right now, and Barnes. And Barnes is, he's a tough guy, man. So, no,
yeah,
we've been
and that
lucky
was
to have him
that was the very first time that I saw when you call, somebody like Norm a wizard, Barnes a magician. It was the very first time I ever saw a player understand their own transition, because I had never, other than league bowling on a house shot where the move is pretty simple. You just keep chasing it a little left and it gets easier and easier. I had never bowled on the same pair for more than a game, right? At any competition level, really, other than the Masters, which was a 3-game thing, but this was a best of 7. So, I think Chris, I've spoken to him about it. He's like, yeah, you've obviously gotten better at it now, but back then I was just waiting. I knew you were going to win the first game, and you did. And then I knew you were going to have transition, and you would have no idea what to do. And then I would win the second game. And then you would work it out, and then I'd probably lose the third game. But then you would be at the left gutter, and there'll be nowhere else left for you to go. Just the way he described, the way he dismantled me, and that's kind of when I honestly saw somebody like Chris, and I just was like, this is who I have to be. This is the type of player that I have to be. Anyway, Tom, seriously,
all right, man.
I've been talking to you for over an hour, and there's more to the show after you.
All right.
So I'll let you go. I really appreciate the amount of time that you've given me today. It's I don't know. It's so awesome to be able to have guys like yourself communicate to the fans of bowling in such a direct way. It's really, really kind. So I'll let you go.
Thanks for what you do for all the fans. I mean, and believe me, I've watched this guy stay long after a tournament's over, win or lose, and sign the longest line of autographs for every last kid that comes to a tournament. And I really appreciate that. And appreciate everything that you do to try to grow the game outside of even when you're just bowling, and still realizing that the bowling, you heard what Jordan said during the last show when they told him about, when they were talking about all the endorsements he was getting and all the money he was getting for shoe contracts and all that stuff. And he said, I realized that I did my talking with my game. They were not going to give me all that stuff if I averaged 2 points and 3 rebounds a game. That I got it all because of my game. And you realize the game is still the most important thing in performing, and you never let up. You've met every challenge and you keep meeting them. So thanks.
I don't intend to stop either. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't intend on stopping either.
Great. That's good to know.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Well, that went a little longer than I was hoping. I was not hoping, what I was expecting. But that's the problem when you talk to Tom, is he's so passionate, and he just shares everything from within, that you can just tell that you don't want him to stop talking. Like, you just want him to continue to keep going. So I appreciate you guys for sticking around. and watching. I think it was really worth it. I'm certainly going to go back and rewatch it, and hopefully we can enjoy more from Tom. So as you can see, my stream has gone a little bit haywire, and that's because Tom has kind of left the he's left the chat. So I'm going to have to readjust my camera on the fly. So bear with me for a moment. But while I do that, I want you guys to get prepared and ready. We're about to hit the classroom, where I'm going to teach you guys how to learn to create axis rotation for your bowling ball. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully, guys, it'll be really simple too. This is something that I think anyone, anywhere in the world can actually practice it, can learn it, can do it. So yeah, let's see if we can't get to the classroom right now. And I've got Zach in the background who's ferociously trying to get my screen. And Zach, you know what? I'm going to try to work here on the fly, and I'm going to rearrange myself. It's going to look a little bit weird, but let's go over to the classroom and I'll move around and see if I can't make this happen. All right, so here we have the bowling ball. And when we are talking about creating axis of rotation, what we're asking the players to do, and I'll stand up here so you can see it a little bit better. I'll make sure that I'm in view, is at the point of release, depending on where the hand follows through. So as you can see, my hand has come all the way through to, you know, close to 12 o'clock there. So it starts at 6 o'clock. If this was a watch face, if you could imagine 12 o'clock being up the top here, and then down the bottom here is 6 o'clock, and then we have 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock on the other side. So you can see my hand is starting here at 6 o'clock, and if I was to just roll my hand straight through the ball all the way up and get it to face 12 o'clock, we are essentially creating 0 degrees of axis rotation. Now, if I want to create a curve on the ball, having 0 degrees of axis rotation is going to get the ball to roll very end over end. So we're not going to see any curve. And it doesn't matter what bowling ball I have in my hand. I could have the latest and greatest or a house ball. Ultimately, what will happen with 0 axis rotation is the ball will not curve. So we need to give it some axis of rotation in order for it to spin. You include with your axis of rotation rev rate, and then it gives you a algorithm for potential hook or boards covered. So here I'm going to show you now how we're going to create that axis of rotation. So as the ball is coming, I'm going to move this way so you can see it a little clearer too. If this were the release point as I'm coming through, I'm about to let go of the ball, and depending on where my hand turns and my fingers, the point or the position in which my fingers are now facing will then determine the amount of side rotation that we can give. So here again, I'm moving back a little bit more. I apologize for my position in here. So here I am at 6 o'clock. There is 0 degrees of axis rotation if I were to follow through in that path. But if I were to, at the release point, come down and just gradually turn my hand to the side of the ball and then follow through in that moment, now the ball has been given side rotation and it will spin once it hits the friction. So the further behind the ball, you might hear people say that. So when I'm looking at it from the behind motion here, there it is at 6 o'clock on the watch face. If I follow it all the way through, it goes to 12. And then if I am to create side rotation, I'm actually going to slowly turn my hand to the side of the ball. And now you can see my fingers are actually pointing away from 12 o'clock and closer to 11 o'clock, as if it were on a clock face. And if I were to go even more, you would see that my fingers are now towards 10 o'clock. And if I include my rotation with that, all of a sudden you get something that looks a little bit like this, where that's 0 degrees of axis rotation. And I know it might be very difficult to see, but I'm doing my best here considering the circumstances. So there we have 0 degrees of axis rotation. And when I turn the ball and create that side rotation, you will see the ball will start to spin in a sideward motion. That is increasing your axis of rotation. When would you want to do any of this? Well, one, decreasing your axis of rotation allows you to be a much better spare shooter, right? When our bowling ball isn't curving nearly as much, it allows us to be more accurate in terms of down lane reaction. So we aren't expecting the ball to curve away from the 10 pin or over curve or under curve from a 7 pin. It is allowing us to be really, really consistent in ball motion towards our spares. However, if we want to get strikes, we need to create angle of entry. And that's when getting that hand position to change and to create that axis of rotation allows the ball to be spinning on its axis through the oil. And when it hits the friction, it then changes into the direction that it's spinning. Now, like I said, you include your rev rate will then determine how much hook you have as a potential covering of board. So the higher the rev rate, the more side rotation that you put on away from 12 o'clock or 0 degrees will then give you more down lane movement. Now, there are a couple of things that I probably should point out. Is there such a thing as too much side rotation? Well, one, yes, for 2 reasons though. One, it is very, very, very difficult to control a ball that has a heavy amount of axis rotation, side rotation. The ball will want to change its direction in a very acute angle. And that can be very difficult to get it to go through the pocket the right way. And 2, the way the bowling balls are designed on the inside with their weight block and their cores, you can have too much side rotation where your ball won't actually get into a roll. So the ball won't have a chance to actually hook, especially if you're throwing the ball with any speed. If it's quite slow, you'll see it. You normally see little kids do it. They bowl very, very slow and you see the ball kind of spinning. And then when it gets to the friction, it just kind of duck hooks to the left-hand gutter or the right-hand gutter. And that's all because that the rotation isn't matched with rev rate and it isn't matched with ball speed. So when you're practicing, even if you're at home, work on those different hand positions. Simple as that. To create that side rotation is how you generate your curve at the release point, but be very aware that if your speed does not match your rev rate and your axis of rotation, it will become very difficult to control. And second of all, if you put on too much side roll, the ball itself is not designed to form its internal roll. And that's going to make it very difficult for you to hit the pocket and strike. Well, that's the tip from today. I want to thank Storm for powering this classroom, and let's head on over to the last segment of the show. That's a new graphic. Did you like that? I liked it. The new Storm graphic that Zach has put together for me. Right, so like always, I want to give you guys a chance to win a prize. So we'll head over to the giveaway and see if we can win a prize. All right, last time we spun the wheel and it took forever. So we're going to spin it early and you have a chance to win a video autograph card, a personalized video, pair of BELMO socks, or a BELMO hat. So Zach, if we can spin that wheel. Now you've got 1 minute and 40 to do this. What I'm going to ask you to do is in the comments of YouTube, if you could please write my website, www.jasonbelmonte.com. If you do that, you are in the draw. It's as simple as that. I think this is 3 autograph cards in a row. That we aren't even meaning to do that. That is a legitimate 3 autograph cards prizes to win. We're not purposely making it fall on the autograph card. But if you want to win, all you need to do in the next minute okay, is write my website in the comments. I will go through the comments. I will find a random winner, and then I will contact you. If you want to make that process even easier, you can write an email address that I can contact you on under or next to your comment of Jason Belmonte. And that'll make it a lot easier for me to contact you should you win. Otherwise, just write my website and then I'll find you, or I'll pick a random winner. So we have 32 seconds, 30 seconds left before the giveaway will end. So you've still got time to quickly write my website. And maybe after the show, if you fancy it, feel free to head over to my website. See if there's anything there that you like. See if there's anything you can buy for yourself, for a friend, or there's some information that you can learn more about me if you're interested. Actually, I'm going to have some pretty cool updates coming up regarding the merchandise area, so stay tuned for that. Well, that's it. The raffle is closed. I will, as soon as this stream has ended, go through the messages in the comments to find my winner, and I will get that signed, personalized autograph card sent to you immediately. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes us for the BELMO show. Before I go, though, and give you my final thoughts, I just want to say a massive thank you to my sponsors. So we'll run that page right now and allow me the opportunity to thank Stream Inspectors. Zach and his team behind the show have done all the graphics. They're awesome at what they do. I'm having a lot of fun. We obviously are still learning a few things. We've got to get, our guests to stop jumping off the calls to screw my screens up. Storm Bowling, they're my main sponsor. I love them dearly. I've used them for all of my championship winning performances. Head over to stormbowling.com. Vice Grips, love using Vice Grips in the bowling balls. They give me the great comfort and control out of the ball that I need. So make sure you check them out. Also, since using Vice, my fingers haven't really hurt at all or been torn. Dexter Bowling, best shoes in the game. It's all I ever wear. It's all I ever want to wear. If you're interested, go to dexterbowling.com to get yourself a brand new pair of bowling shoes. And Cloud Construct. When you go to my website, if you like what you see, it's because Cloud Construct built it. So hit them up at cloudconstruct.com as well. And then you can obviously see if they can help you out. All right, guys, that's the end of the BELMO show. What a really great show. Thank you to Tom Clark for coming on and giving me so much of his time. I appreciate your patience while we went through a little bit of the camera issues. I appreciate you guys hanging around to write all the comments that you have for the entire stream and been engaged. My next goal is to do way better at involving you guys in the chat through the conversation. That's my next goal, is to make sure that we are more engaged with each other. Until the next show, which the next guest will be the one, the only Rob Stone, the voice of the PBA, along with his partner in crime, Randy Peterson. But Rob will be joining me live next week. I can't wait to have that show. So start thinking of your questions that you want to ask Rob. Until then, be good. Peace.